hope you enjoyed this episode of Audio Signals Podcast, hosted by Marco Ciappelli. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then take a moment to rate this show and add it to your favorite podcast player. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. We invite you to come back for more stories and follow Marco Ciappelli on his social media as he continues musing on stories, storytelling, and storytellers.
Well done, Rick. Well done. And as people can see, it wasn't me playing. I wish I could play like that. I think in my head I can do that, but I can't. In reality, it was Rick DellaRatta, my guest today on Audio Signal Podcast, where, as you all know, we talk about storytelling and storytellers and stories. And I can tell you that from the beginning and the pre-recording part of this conversation, it's going to be a good story. And if you know me, you know I love stories, but I also love music. And I always say that music, art in general, photography, we're all storytellers. We just use a different medium to share the story. And today I'm excited because there is a story about Rick, and there is a story about what Rick does with his music. And there is a story of Jets for Peace. So it's going to be fun. Buckle up. Stay tuned, and you already heard Rick play, so now you're going to hear Rick's voice. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marco. Delighted to be here with you.
I'm excited, and I thank you very much for that wonderful intro that you did. And I'm going to start with my usual at this point question, which is, who is Rick? And you don't need to go too philosophical on that, but, whatever comes to your mind.
Well, hopefully now I'm a person who wants to combine all of the jewels of learning that I have been so fortunate to receive through a life embracing the arts and culture with ideas and techniques for how I can help people live a better life, a more fulfilling life, maybe raise their social conscience, and maybe raise their frequency, as I've been hearing from a lot of healers. Raising your frequency, the arts and culture is great for that. And because of my organization, Jazz for Peace, we have great ideas that have proven to be true, that we've already done as achievements, and ideas now that we feel just as confident could help us in the future.
And this is not just an idea of something that you want to happen. Just for Peace has been active for quite a while. I was reading a little bit of the origin story, which unfortunately is connected, if I understand, with an event that we're all aware in New York City, where you are, and how that kind of gave you that spark to say, hey, I know at the time you were already a well-known musician. Why not use it for something else? And so can you start maybe with that story, which I think is very, very moving?
Well, I had, by the time 9/11 came, was the start of Jazz for Peace, I had traveled all over the world, performing all over the place. Just in the country where you're from that we were talking about, I've been to Bolzano, which was the city I couldn't even remember.
Oh, okay.
I just remembered it, Bolzano, wherever that's,
Right,
wherever that, yes, okay.
Yep.
Bolzano, which I now just remembered for Marco. I was trying to remember it off camera. Milan, Torino, Bologna, just in Italy. But if you can take all the other countries and multiply them, it's on and on and on it goes with all of these different countries and cities. And I learned what I want everyone to know, and that is people are people, and they all feel music. They love music. They feel it in their soul. As you were telling me off camera, your affiliation with music is so similar to everyone's. It's something that cuts through boundaries, and it really, anything that can divide us, music can break through and reunite us. And it creates a silence where you don't talk. And from that not talking, you're actually communicating in a way that could be profoundly positive. And when you readdress speech after that music, you're actually in a better place than you were before the music was played, if the music is doing its job, of bringing you the common ground that we all share as people, from creativity to artistry, to humanity, and right now at Jazz for Peace, our latest slogan is the final solution is love.
Which brings me back to the 60s and the 70s and all the things that at the time musicians were doing. They were not just playing, try to make money. And I'm not want to judge anybody right now, but they realized that when you have that stage, when you have that audience, you can do a lot with it. And I know, back in the days, with the Bob Dylan, talking about for
Absolutely.
peace or many others. And I think a lot of musicians now, they're doing it, the younger generation, for the environment, for example, or, to bring still the voice and the movement that you are interested in. So I love what you're doing. And when you talk about music being a unifier, that's so true. I mean, look, you go around the world, you sing too. I know you do sing.
Yes, I'll be doing that for you later.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But the music itself, you don't need. It's a universal language. Right?
Correct.
So you compose and you tell stories through these. And how did it go at the beginning when you went out there and you said, okay, this is what happened, September 11. I want to do something more with my music. Well, not more, but different with my music. And I know you've been playing in front of the UN and many other places. I'm imagining people who say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, was it easy? That's my question.
Well, I was fortunate. I mean, it's crazy because I was unfortunate to see the events of 9/11 from less than a quarter of a mile away from the roof of my building on the Lower East Side, where I just happened to be living at that time. And I was tipped off by a photographer who had a job down on Wall Street. And she called me frazzled. And I said, look, let me just walk up on my roof and see what the heck you're talking about. And I walked up and, it was like walking into a movie. So I was unfortunate to see that firsthand, the trauma of experiencing that, etc. But through that came words that just came out of me. And I had nothing to do except write these words down. I'm like, these words came out of me. I'm not trying to write a poem. I'm not trying to do anything, but the words are coming and I'm just going to write them on a scribble on a piece of paper. So all I had at the end of that day to show for my day of 9/11 was a bunch of words on a piece of paper. I looked at the words and I said, wow, the title of this can easily be called Jazz for Peace. And that's what I called the title of a poem. Now, I've basically been trying to live up to the words of that poem every day since. So everything that's evolved has basically evolved from me waking up and saying, I have another day to live up to those words. I mean, nothing's going to happen to me today if I don't live up, I can live up to these words today and my electricity will still be running. I'll still have running water. I'll still have, I'll be fed. I'll still be breathing oxygen. So why not try to live up for one more day? And tomorrow, hopefully I'll wake up and say, hey, one more day, of trying to live up to the words of a poem. Now, when you said the United Nations, it's funny because I had played at the United Nations a bunch of times in a private party band. So there was a guy, I still see him once in a while, he's a saxophone player. He somehow was in the private party situation with the United Nations where when they call a band, because so-and-so, they have these parties there. They would have parties at the United Nations. I don't know if you get married there. I doubt it, but you could have some kind of a party at the United Nations if you were somebody or somewhat. We might have been playing for dignitaries. I don't know. But they were parties, and he was calling me as one of the people in the band. And I would show up sometime, and I'd be like, hey, aren't you the guy on Saturday Night? You play in the Saturday Night Live band? I know you from this record. There were other people. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And they'd be like, I'm here for the $350, a lot of money back then. And I was like, well, me too. Well, we're both here for the same reason, even though you're a much more famous musician than me at that time, Mm-hmm. So some of the people I would meet in this guy's band, but it wasn't what I ended up doing at the United Nations. What I ended up doing was, because I had, reached a certain level of my career, as you had mentioned, where I was somewhat well known anyway. And I had written this poem, and I had recited the poem at a festival, and then I had put it to music and performed it at another concert, and the press had written about it. And then I was playing a few Jazz for Peace concerts around New York, and I was just going to whatever my soul was telling me. I was following my star with this poem. Whatever my soul told me was the next step forward. So I was able to actually ask my manager to just call over to the United Nations and tell him, because I always wanted to. It's just, you think of it, you don't actually do. We always think of stuff that we're like, well, I don't think I'll ever do this, but I would love to, Mm-hmm. I would love to bring a band, a multicultural band, into the United Nations and do a performance and show how we get along from all different cultures, because I've been all around the world and we do get along. That's a fact. I mean, I play with Italian musicians in Italy and we get along just great. And, Africa, wherever this place is. I hadn't been to Africa at that time. But anyway, eventually I did bring a band into the United Nations with, basically I told my manager, listen, if this thing comes through, if they go for it, you've got to make sure, I don't care who else is in the band or where they're from, but one person has to be Israeli, one person has to be Palestinian, or from a neighboring country, that region. And so she did that. And then the other guys, wherever they were from, was fine. I know one guy was from Europe and et cetera. A few other continents were represented. But the bottom line is, I had brought together Israeli, Palestinians, and Americans at the United Nations, and I thought it would be a great idea for us to build on that. And time has shown that that would have been a good idea at that time. So my failure to succeed at convincing the world at that time is one of the reasons that I'm in demand now, because people say, maybe we should listen to maybe he might be right about something else,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I'm sure that people that listen to you during the concert and they hear about Jazz for Peace, they're definitely moved. Now, for one man to change the world, it's a big feat. But I think it's one of those situations where one by one, word of mouth, even a podcast like this, and articles on a news, on a magazine, or a newspaper, it's going in the long run to make the difference. And I think that what you decided to do, it wasn't because you had some economic gain in mind, or here's a great idea, it's going to be a hit, right? I mean, you already wrote music before. You just said, I kind of changed perspective. I think that witnessing an event like September 11, it changed perspective. I mean, I was in Naples, Florida at the time. I remember they called me. Funny story, Italian too. I was managing a Vespa store at the time, the Italian motor scooter, a dealer. And they called me across the street in a restaurant, and they said, you're not going to believe it, like what's going on. And I walked in and I said, this looked like a movie. Like you said, you walk into a movie scene and you realize it's not CGI. It changed you. It changed you. And I want to know this. How did it change? Did it change your style of your music? Did it change the way you wrote your lyrics in general? Not just when you do Jazz for Peace, but as as a storyteller?
Well, for the first time, I recited over my music. So I had never put music to spoken word, but because I had a poem, I felt one of the best ways to communicate that poem was through spoken word, and I would freely improvise underneath and make up something different each time, you know? So I basically, I had a spoken word composition. So that was a first. And I also had content. I had a tremendous amount of content from the fact that I was now uniting my music with a passion and a purpose to make our world a better place and demonstrate that and prove that it can be done. And, again, you brought up all these people from Bob Dylan to the other names you mentioned. They're all part of a foundation that I had to build on. And that's part of the Jazz for Peace poem too, was that, all these people had laid a foundation for me to now carry forward. So I had all of their spirits, you know what I mean, to my advantage and to my, I could really call all those spirits in and say, hey, it's not just me, it's all of us. And then I could tell the people, it's not just us, it's you. Because my belief is that each individual can make a difference simply in small little ways, simply by saying, hey, I know I'm only one person, but I believe we should avoid this. We should do this, because right now we're doing some things that, if it could be avoided, you look at the emissions that are involved in war, all of the pollution and the war and the atrocities. Hey, the people around the world can make a difference because we're all connected.
Yeah. And people sometimes don't realize, but there's always a bunch of wars happening any given time. It's not, we think about the big wars, the world wars. We know now in the news when something happened and it's there, but there is always some conflict, and even a small community, we just maybe don't see it in the news, but there's a lot of people that will benefit from embracing the others in a very idealistic way. But we should be like that. I want to talk a little bit more about Jets for Peace. So when you do something, you do an event, what does then Jets for Peace does with either you get funding, you give grants, what's the outcome so far for Jets for Peace?
Well, here's what we do. Basically, we have a model. It's a fundraising model. It's called an empowerment tree. And we learned it simply by partnering with major people. Even the country of Rwanda, for example, when they wanted to come out of their genocide, we were contacted by Rwanda, and we helped them out of that genocide and helped them reintroduce their country to the world in 2009. But we also partnered with all of the great nonprofits, whether it was the Red Cross or Habitat for Humanity or Special Olympics or United Way. We partnered with them and we learned things from them. And from all the things we've learned, we realized that anyone who has an outstanding cause, any individual, we have an easy 3-step process. And so the most important thing to remember with Jazz for Peace is that we can help you no matter big, no matter how small, no matter how old, no matter how new, if you follow the process, if you are committed to following the process. And we've helped over 850 of the world's most outstanding causes. And when I say most outstanding causes, I mean some woman who wanted to stop bullying in her school because her son was bullied. That's one of the world's most outstanding causes because she's not compromised. She's doing it from the good of her heart. You know what I mean? And she's having a profoundly positive impact on the children in the school buy her work. So in other words, you, Marco, could be one of the world's most outstanding causes if you wanted to, or you could already be, and I just don't know it. That's my point. My point is it's a level playing field. You don't have to be a billionaire to make a difference in the world, a profoundly positive difference. So forget about that idea. All of you can, everybody can. And you don't have to be, all you have to do to partner with Jazz for Peace is follow the simple guidelines. If you're committed to following the simple guidelines, see, a lot of people, there's a million ways not to qualify, and they're afraid, I won't qualify. You will qualify by following the easy guidelines. That's how we've been able to help so many.
That's cool. So I want to go now, because we can go in a lot of different directions. I want to talk about music with you because I love music in general and jazz.
Sure.
I like the giants. I was listening to Nina Simone a couple of days ago.
Oh, wow.
How amazing she is. But
she's one of those people, Marco, that I was talking about. Yeah. She's one of the people who laid the foundation.
Right.
If you look at
that's why she came in my mind.
She did tremendous work to help me launch Jazz for Peace. She's one of those people that I'm talking about.
Cool. So while I would like to go there, I think it's more important in line with the scope of Audio Signals podcast, which is about storytelling. And of course, you already went there, but tell me about music as a form of storytelling, because many people and most of my guests are writer. You always think, I write a book, I'm a storyteller. But like I said at the beginning, you can tell through painting, through photography. You're always telling a story as a sculptor, as a musician, of course. Your experience with music as a medium for telling story and moving people eventually.
Well, music is as phenomenal a medium and opportunity that I could imagine to tell a story because of the various opportunities that you have. For example, when you sing a song, okay, those lyrics are telling a story. However, your interpretation of that song might be unique and special. That is telling a story. When you improvise, you are telling a story. And that's a whole nother story. You know what I mean? So there's stories within the story. For example, if I was to sing a song, play an improvisation, and then recite my poem, which I might even do for you now that we're talking about it, when we do that, I would literally be telling you 3 stories.
Right. So the stories come through music. Let's recap this. The story that comes through the notes, the story that comes through the lyrics, and the story that comes from the way that you interpret the notes and the lyrics and how you deliver it. That's the 3 that you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. So in other words, let's say I start out by singing a song by, let's say, Thelonious Monk or something, right? Mm-hmm. Those lyrics will be telling a story, okay? But my interpretation, my unique interpretation, based on my journey through music, will also be somewhat of a story. And then my improvisation, which might follow that, okay, is going to tell a story just from me. Just my story, you know what I mean? Now I'm not telling the story of the song, but I'm telling my own story, Right, and then if I was to recite the words of the poem, in that would be a 3rd story, all 3 stories in one.
All right. How about we play a little bit right now?
Want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to do what
give us an example of that.
So this is a song, by the way. It's by Thelonious Monk, and it's called "Ruby, My Dear." Now, I used to, the first job I ever got in New York City, okay? I was visiting New York. I wasn't even living in New York. I was visiting New York, and I always knew if I ever came to New York to visit to call this piano player, amazing piano player named John Jerzinski or something like that. He was an amazing piano player. He could play stride music and go into Stravinsky, and then he'd go into Fats Waller, and he just all over the place and stay in the stride. It was phenomenal what he did. Wow. Anyway, I visit him and in this diner, he's playing in a diner. And I'm like, wow, anybody that would hire, he's so eccentric. I was like, anybody that would hire this man, that's a place I would love to play. Because the freedom that he would require to play, you know what I mean? He's like, there's no way you could put this guy in a box and say, no, you only have to, he wouldn't do it. So he gives me the guy's number. I call the guy. I go, he sends me over to his house that day. I play for him that day. He hires me. Now I'm in this diner and I'm playing from 12 midnight till 4 a.m. And this diner is packed at 4 a.m. Okay. It's like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, something like that. Absolutely packed. You can't even stand. Everyone's like standing, it's like an after hours place. A woman taps me on the back. I'm playing this song, Ruby, My Dear. And she says, sir, I just have to tell you something. I said, what do you want to tell me? She said, I just cannot believe that I'm in a diner at 3:30 in the morning and a piano player is playing Ruby, My Dear by Thelonious Monk. And I said, lady, I can't believe I'm in a diner at 3:30 in the morning and somebody even knows I'm playing the song. And she says to me, well, I have to tell you something, sir. And I said, what? She said, my aunt was Ruby. And
oh, wow.
These are the crazy things.
If I wanted it.
What?
If I wanted a grand finale on that story, that was it.
That was her.
She was Ruby. Oh.
And she told me the real story that's not in the history books about Ruby, My Dear.
Wow.
And she told me that Monk was having an affair with her aunt. And while he was married to Nellie, I don't even know if I should say this. And, he wrote a song for her. And that's the song, Ruby. So now I'm going to sing this song, Ruby, My Dear. Then I'm going to go into something that's kind of a free thing. I don't know what it is because that's going to be another story. That's a story unto itself. Then I'm going to kind of bring in that Jazz for Peace poem so that you can hear the words of that, the words that I wrote on 9/11. Okay.
Go for it.
Ruby, my dear, hold back that tear. I know he's gone. Your love has flown. You're all alone, and I know you cry. There's no reply. Pain lingers on. It doesn't show, 'cause you say so. One day he came to you and made the music play in his way. Said you'd rather die than say goodbye. But there'll come a day though he's away, this song. You carry on, Ruby, my dear. I hear jazz for peace coming through the trees, and in my heart it fills me like a celebration. I see the light, and I want to follow, inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. And lay the groundwork for us to build on in this universal language that is a gift for all mankind. And when we speak it, people are inspired by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace and love, and intelligence that leads to reaching potential. That we have in our souls, so we can raise our total conscience and see that the gift of giving is our greatest privilege. I hear jazz for peace.
I'm going to fade it out here and end the show.
Say it again.
I'm going to fade out the music when I edit this and end the show. But no, actually, I'm going to keep talking because that was a perfect example of, I mean, you introduced it, you did it. I mean, the solo there, you were still on the Thelonious Monk song and Ruby, but you were going some bossa nova, some Latin jazz. I mean, I heard a lot of different things there, but you were still there. And
Right.
then you went in the improvisation and the old words that you put on it. I mean, it was amazing. I'm honored that you did. This was unique, because if you do it again, right, it's not going to be the same thing.
Never.
So
Never.
this
Yes.
is for audio signal.
The only way to hear what I just did is to come to your show. That's it.
What a gift! What an amazing gift! And Rick, what a great time I had in sharing this 35 minutes with you. I love your story. I love what you're doing. I hope you will come back again. Maybe we can have some more fun with. Maybe we go back in some history of jazz and the things that inspire you and the artists that you love and why. We could do something like that. That would be a great story.
That would really be fun. A part 2 where we could just
Yeah.
go to the next tangent from now we have this foundation. Yeah, that'd be great.
We can do as many episodes as we want. I'm sure that we're not going to run out of topics or ideas.
That's for sure.
But for now, we're going to share these. We just share these with the people that have been listening at this point when we
Great.
publish this. Everything regarding you, Jets for Peace. I know there is also a book that
There is a
that you
book,
wrote.
yes.
Yeah, I have it. It's on Amazon. I'll put the link to it. There you go,
Yeah.
with the Statue of Liberty, paving the path for peace through music. The amazing
That's it.
story of Rick DellaRatta and Jets for Peace.
Yeah.
I'll have the link for that as well.
Perfect.
Get in touch with you. And thank you so much. I'm honored that you spent time with me today.
It's my pleasure, Marco.
Well, because we're still recording, the people will be listening when we already publish it. So we'll talk about this when we stop the recording.
Yeah.
So with that said, again, I hope everybody enjoyed this show, this episode with Rick DellaRatta, and stay tuned for many more stories, storytelling, and storytellers on Audio Signal Podcast. Thank you very much, everybody. Peace. Jets for Peace, actually, in this case.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Audio Signals Podcast, hosted by Marco Ciappelli. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then take a moment to rate this show and add it to your favorite podcast player. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. We invite you to come back for more stories and follow Marco Ciappelli on his social media as he continues musing on stories, storytelling, and storytellers.